I'm sure you've spent some time talking about Brexit, and I thought I would kick off by trying to lighten the mood by sharing some further trivia with you on the subject. Since the vote on the 23rd of June, I was told this morning that sales of premium gin in John Lewis have gone up by 100%. And in Waitrose, I heard on Monday that sales of newspapers had gone up by 44%. So there, make of that what you will, but it's clearly having some impact on behaviours and buying patterns. But seriously, though, we are in some fairly important times, changing times, and as I'm going to attempt to explain to you, I do think that that productivity is very important. I've very much enjoyed working with a group of exceptional people over the last year, and really, although Carolyn very kindly said I've been leading it and evangelising for it, frankly, they really are the evangelists. All I have done is sought to bring some people together who I think between them have got some fantastic insights, ideas, and have shown extraordinary leadership in getting us to where we are today. So, and I'm pleased to say that you're going to hear directly from some of them later on. I've got three messages that I wanted to share with you, really. And the first is sort of what I've said, which is that productivity is very, very important. It basically is what sits behind progress in pretty much everything, but certainly anything from wages through to our international competitiveness. And for the economy, obviously, that is hugely important. And if this was important before the 23rd of June, actually after the 23rd of June, this has, I think, become really of critical importance to the future of the UK. Obviously, we are in a slightly different state with regard to our attractiveness as an international investment opportunity. We're going to have to create our own luck and drive our own future to an even greater extent than we were before. And of course, the productivity of the United Kingdom and its ability to compete, and businesses within it to compete, is therefore just even more important. But there's another point which I think I wanted to call out, which is when you look behind the result, one of the things I think you can draw from it is that the reason that people didn't listen to the many warnings about the economy was perhaps that for quite a lot of people in this country, the economy is not working for them. And if we want to make it work better, then we really do need to get productivity to start moving forward. And what I'm convinced about is that that can actually only be achieved with businesses taking a really strong lead. And the great thing about this is that there's a very close relationship between improving productivity and business success. This is not some kind of philanthropic movement. This is all about creating better businesses and doing better for the country. So productivity is very, very important. Second point I wanted to make to you is that there is a huge opportunity, a huge and valuable opportunity to improve it. And I just wanted to show you a couple of slides. I'm not going to show you very many, which illustrate this. And the first just illustrates how unusual the recent performance in terms of our productivity or lack of productivity growth is post a recession. So the chart shows you on the left there what has happened after each recession, after the last 4 recessions, to productivity. And typically what happens after a recession is a number of less productive businesses go out of business and a number of other businesses improve. Unemployment can come down. On the chart on the right shows you unemployment. What's happened on this one, though, is that our productivity has stayed absolutely stubbornly flat since the recession way back in 2008. And it's a huge contrast to what went before it. Now, one of the things that we grappled with early on in the work is that productivity is a word that's talked about by economists quite a lot, and indeed, senior business people in this room probably understand very well what we're talking about. But actually, generally speaking, it's not something which really appeals or gets to the business level particularly strongly. And yet, we're convinced that that's where the opportunity lies, and we're even more sure of that, having done some work during the course of this piece of work, helped by McKinsey, who I'm pleased to say did it for free, which was extremely good of them. And what that showed is that 2/3 of employees in the United Kingdom work in companies where their productivity is below what would be expected for a company of that size and that sector. And if we were able to make an improvement of 10 percentage points in the performance of the bottom 3 quartiles of that group, then that would be worth something in the order of over £100 billion of gross value added to the economy each and every year thereafter. There are very few things which offer such an opportunity on this scale, and this is one of them. And it's perfectly doable. So this is not something which requires everybody to completely transform the way they're operating or move out of the sector they're in or do extraordinary things. The challenge is that we need to do quite a lot of things in order to access this, but they're very, very doable. If you really boil it down, and in some ways I think the survey you just did was pretty accurate, it is about business skills, but it's particularly about business leadership skills and high-performance working. And if you could make improvements in those, and you can get businesses to improve, not to become upper quartile. I mean, sometimes people do simple analysis like that. This 100 billion number really says that if your company is at, say, the 47th percentile, if it could get to the 57th, or if you're at the 22nd percentile and you get to the 32nd, we could be looking at this kind of impact on the economy as a whole. So, very, very important, huge opportunity. Third is that everything here and progress towards accessing that depends on engagement. And in that vein, one of the members of the group, Ian Davis, said in one of our early meetings that he said, look, productivity is a death word. It's a death word used by economists that doesn't really get sort of business people going. It has echoes of cost reduction and things such as that. So we decided quite early on that we needed to change the language. And that's really where we got to coming up with a different way to describe this, which was simply to ask the question is, how good is your business really? And in doing that, what we are seeking to do is to speak to business people and their competitive spirit, to say, well, the worst thing you can have as a business person is sort of knowledge that somebody who's sort of similar enough to you is doing something that you're not and doing really well out of it. We wanted to stimulate people to be competitive and to think about how they could make their businesses better. And that's really where this how good is your business really idea came from. What we went on to do is to develop some practical and modern ways to allow businesses to assess how good they are at doing this. And the team have developed an app. It's in a beta form, which allows a business person to go onto it and to assess the performance of their business in only about 15 minutes and get an idea of where they're good and where they're not so good and to give them a signpost as to where they could go. In doing this work, we road tested it with manufacturing and hospitality. We deliberately chose businesses at opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of capital intensity and business processes, and really asked them to test it to destruction. And I'm pleased to say that it came through that very, very well. Not least because it sort of measures fairly simple stuff. We're not talking about, again, hugely complex issues. We're talking about things which I'm sure resonate strongly with all the people in this room. And I haven't got time to go into all of the detail of these. But again, it's about good business practice and encouraging wider uptake for that. But of course, it's one thing to go onto an app or read a book or read a report. What, again, most business people want to see is practical evidence of change. They want to see what best practice looks like. And so among the work that we've done, and in fact a lot of the focus of the work has been led by members of the PLG, the Productivity Leadership Group, and again we're going to hear from some of them later, so I'll let them speak about the work they've done, to get in and at their sectors, to get businesses together within their sectors. And these are ranging from the creative sector, digital, food and drink, manufacturing and retail, to understand what practically can be done. And so what we have developed through that is not only an ability to sort of assess what the current situation is, but then to support that with some practical examples in different sectors of what good looks like, and then also some support networks to allow people to improve. And so what we've got, we believe, is something that's real, that a business person can come to. It's not just an idea. They can get engaged with it, and they can start to make progress with it. However, it's not enough on its own. Because even if all of the businesses that have been involved in this work did that and they made improvements, frankly, it wouldn't make enough difference to the scale of the opportunity and the imperative that we face in the United Kingdom. So what we need now is a movement of many thousands of businesses that join this and all come together to seek to make these improvements. And in fact, in some ways, what we've done so far, I hope, will simply become initial examples of many that follow it in making that movement. We want it to be very much open source. This is not an exercise in myself or any of my colleagues on the team saying to people, you must do this, or prescribing an answer. It's much more about encouraging people to want to join in this aspirational movement to make all our businesses better, and as a consequence of that, to improve the economy and indeed the benefits that flow from that in society. It also needs to be an evolving movement. This is not something that is static. It's something that we want to see changing. And already we're talking about the app. We want to see releases of that app. Release 1, release 2, release 3, release 4. We're also looking at ways to develop additions to that, sort of brother or sister versions of the app. Phil Smith is here from Cisco, and he's leading some work with the Tech Partnership to look at whether we can create a similar diagnostic tool which says, how digital is my business really? Because digital is clearly a huge opportunity, but it's very hard for business people to understand what to do when they get into it. Often they'll be met by someone who's trying to sell them something. When in fact what they need is that it's not too complicated necessarily. It may be about adjusting some things that are already going on. So if we can come up with some practical ways which allow people to understand that well, that would be enormously helpful. The movement also needs to be networked. We're not just going to get people to sign up to it because I've issued a report or we've sort of issued a press release. It needs to be organic, and it needs to be within networks that business people come across regularly. So we've had a number of conversations with banks. And one of the points that we've discussed with them is, look, if you're going to lend money to a company, it's going to be a better lending decision if you do so to a company that first of all understands whether or not it's good at productivity or not, or how good is my business really, and secondly has a plan to improve it. So what if we could develop these apps in partnership with you, and we could integrate them with your lending processes? And in doing that, we have the facility perhaps to reach thousands of businesses in a way which could be a lot easier than trying to sort of tell people to get involved. And we've had similarly very encouraging conversations with LEPs, with trade associations, and with all sorts of other people. So that's where we are. We're waiting to see what the outcome was of the referendum, and we've decided in the light of that not to launch the movement immediately, because one of the things that's going to be very important to this is very strong political support. It's business-led, but it needs very strong support. And I'm going to introduce Andrew in a minute, who will talk a bit about that. But what we want to do instead is really invite you as a key audience, actually, a key audience of people we'd hope would be very interested in this, to get involved, to give us some feedback, to go and have a look. There's tons of information on this URL, howgoodisyourbusinessreally.co.uk. It contains the report. It's got case studies and reports from all of the different areas. It shows you how the app would work. There's a host of information there. And what we're encouraging you to do is to sign up to say you're interested and be a part or join the movement and start feeding into it to tell us what's good and what isn't good about it, so that what we can do is continue to build and iterate on what we've got ahead of what we hope will be a bigger launch come October or thereabouts. As I mentioned, the government has a key role to play. This needs to be business-led, but the government has a key role to play. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Sir Andrew Whitty, who's the Chief Executive of GlaxoSmithKline, who's going to talk a bit about what that role looks like. Thank you.